Hey there, storytellers! Welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 10 of Bookmas. Today's video is going to be a short little review of If the Fates Allow by Rainbow Rowell. So, because this is a short story, there is not much to review, but it follows a character from her novel Fangirl named Reagan, who is Kath's roommate in that story. But Reagan goes home for the holidays to her little small town in Nebraska to visit her grandfather, and this story is set during COVID times. So the first major portion of the story happens that year that COVID was crazy. 2020, man. It was wild, but the next part of it, the little ending bit, takes place a year later, which would effectively be now in 2021, right around this time actually. And it's a little bit weird to read a story that's set during COVID times, I won't lie. So basically, Reagan goes to visit her grandfather because out of all of their family, those two are being the most cautious. They were the ones that sort of stayed isolated while the rest of the family had been seeing each other all along, and they're just not comfortable sort of being around the entire family. But Reagan's grandfather recently lost his wife right before COVID started, and while he's thankful his wife didn't have to go through with it, he is lonely, so Reagan decides to go be with him for the holidays. While she's visiting with him, she ends up encountering his neighbor, Mason, I believe his name is, if I'm remembering right. And it basically starts out with him trying to assist her when she slips on the driveway, and they sort of end up meeting up outside unintentionally. They both just sort of step out to have some air after holiday dinner, and they end up chatting with each other from the porches, and they sort of share things about their lives and their past, and they kind of bond over Jell-O salad of all things. And without spoiling too much, they do have a really sweet, sort of vulnerable moment with each other. But shortly thereafter, Reagan freaks out and runs away, and they don't see each other till a year later. So I'll start by saying I gave this short story a 5 out of 5 stars. I thought for what it was, it really delivered on sort of the Christmas feels as well as the COVID feels. It, like I said, was really weird to read a story that so directly mentions COVID, and especially really weird to see fictional characters struggle with COVID, because while it is a contemporary story, it's kind of grounds them in reality, and it makes it a little bit, it's like breaking the fourth wall almost. It's like a little too weird. But it's basically about connection and sort of that year we all had where we couldn't connect with people, and even gruff, sometimes antisocial Reagan is feeling the sting of being disconnected from people by the time this story picks up at Christmastime, and she's certainly still kind of feeling it come the year later sequence. And I think that's kind of really telling, and like I said, it kind of breaks the fourth wall and makes it a little bit uncomfortable because, you know, we've all gone through it. Quite literally, we've gone through the sting of not being able to see people we want to see or be with loved ones. It's just, I don't know how I feel about it being set during COVID times. It was a little bit too weird for me, I think, but it was handled well. Out of the characters, I already liked Reagan, and I liked Mason. He seemed genuine and sweet from what we get to see of him, and I liked Reagan's grandfather. He was kind of no-nonsense, but still kind of a softie at heart, and I appreciated that. Because it was a short story, it meant that this sort of development of their relationship was kind of contained, and I liked that in a way because it meant that there wasn't a lot of superfluous drama that we get in novels. They tend to be kind of drawn out relationship building because there's always drama involved, and it generally involves miscommunication, and it annoys the heck out of me. And in this instance, there's kind of a little bit of delay in their sort of bonding, but it's not because of like crazy relationship drama or anything like that. It's just because, you know, the moment gets overwhelming and Reagan kind of runs off. And that, I think, given the sort of isolation of COVID and the fact that Reagan, while generally pretty straightforward and kind of blunt as a person, is not necessarily one who would be called vulnerable. So it's a little out of her comfort zone. And that vulnerability for Reagan, because like I said, she's not somebody who's necessarily vulnerable, was really refreshing to see. But I thought, without giving the details away, it was a little weird given what was established about her feelings in terms of as a person and related to COVID. The moment was kind of out of character, but I think that was the point, is that she was just so kind of lonely and in need of connection and overwhelmed, and there were so many things going on that true emotion took over, and then she got overwhelmed and it was too much for her. But it was refreshing to see that sort of step out of character for her, and I thought it was handled in a way that was very believable to her character. Obviously, I'm a fan of Rainbow Rowell's writing style because I keep reading her novels, and I love Fangirl, so I really appreciated the writing style in this one. Obviously, it was handled that same kind of quirkiness that Fangirl is handled with. Not quite as intense because Reagan is quirky in a different way than Kath is, and obviously this one's centered around Reagan. But I obviously enjoy the writing style. And in terms of setting, I liked the fact that not only was it set in her hometown in a small town, but that it was sort of in the outskirts, and that it was at her grandfather's house and the only person around was the neighbors, and you know, they kind of stayed distant from each other. And I thought it was just, given the backstory in terms of where Reagan and Mason were in their lives and the facts that they were visiting relatives in their hometown, sort of on the outskirts of town, it was very believable that they wouldn't stumble into each other for more than a year. You know, it was handled well and explained well, so I didn't think it was kind of just a convenient plot device, if you will, to sort of skip the length of the story. I feel like sometimes time jumps happen in short stories because it's used as a plot device to speed things up, and it's not handled gracefully sometimes. I didn't feel that way in this case. I felt like it was handled gracefully and it made a lot of sense. And part of that was because it was set during COVID, and part of it was because they had explained that they were visiting relatives and they didn't actually live at the houses where they met each other. But overall, like I said, I gave it a 5 out of 5. I really enjoyed this little short story. I thought it had some cozy holiday vibes, despite the fact that it was a little too real with the COVID references. But I would definitely recommend it, and I think if you're somebody who wants to kind of give Rainbow Rowell a test run without committing a lot of time, her short stories are definitely ones to consider. This one, especially if you're looking for a holiday read, is up there. I also have a little collection, I think it's called like Just Past Midnight, of hers that's 2 short stories that are also really good, but I think Reagan is kind of a really fun character to do a short story with because she's kind of blunt and gruff and a little rough around the edges sometimes, but she's also genuinely caring, and it's great because you kind of see where she gets that when you're introduced to her grandfather, and it's good. I really like it. I would recommend it. So that's that for this little review of If the Fates Allow by Rainbow Rowell. If you enjoyed this video, do let me know by leaving a like down below. Have you read this short story? What did you think of it? And if not, is it something that might interest you? Let me know down in the comments below. But for now, I'm going to get going. If you want to keep up with me and all of my bookish adventures, you can go ahead and click the subscribe button. And of course, I highly recommend that you ring the little bell so that you don't miss a beat, because it will notify you every time I post a new video, which in the month of December is going to be for 25 whole days. So I will see you guys tomorrow with a new one. Bye!